Welcome. We should be live.
Excellent. Hello. Welcome to the Stream of Truth. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we are talking about the power of truth.
Right. We stole it from Eckhart with The Power of Now. We're
Oh,
just
is that how you got the title? Okay.
no, I just as you said it,
Oh,
I was like Eckhart totally. I just thought of him, so The Power of Now. I think there's like I think there's a few like primordial powers. I think
mm-hmm.
now is one, truth is one, love is
Ah,
one, and then
ah.
devotion is probably another. But
Oh, I like that. That sounds like a great course, a workshop.
it's kind of part of the book that I was writing, the three devotions.
Oh, yes, right. Your
Yeah.
amazing book. Yes. So we were just talking right before we got on the stream of that you and I have gone through, it feels like a big initiation over the past month, maybe around fears and then truth and love. And it feels like we just kind of completed it yesterday, I would say, the the real big initiation where yesterday I texted you that I could see how I had been living so much from fear in regards to a lot of things around you and I over the past month. I could just see it, and then I could also see how throughout my whole life I have been living so much from fear, making decisions based on fear. So I don't know what happened exactly, but I just have such clear eyes after this experience, seeing the truth of the fear that filled my thinking mind and would take control.
Yeah. Fear is really interesting, the way that it works. Because what happens is we form a belief in fear. And then usually when something's going on and we're making a decision of some kind or like reacting to stuff, we're not actually checking in with our beliefs about it. We're past that. We've already assessed the situation as wrong and scary because of the belief, right? So we don't necessarily realize that we're afraid of anything. Um, we're just holding a previously constructed worldview in this particular moment about this thing because of the fear that constructed it in the past. And so it's very subversive in that way. Um, like for example, if we feel like if we feel like uh, let's say we feel like we have to make a ton of money. Um, that's born from various ideas we've had that we can't make enough money, or there's these resistances or things that we think about ourselves that we're scared of around our capacity to earn the money, or that our things will fail, or these fear-based beliefs that we think because we don't really trust ourselves to do what we are trying to do, and stuff like that, right? But we don't necessarily see those aspects of fear. We all we see is, oh, I know what to do. I've got to go do this thing. But we're acting from an agreement to fear. And when we act from an agreement to fear, we strengthen that whole structure of fear. And we do that so much with everything, like so much that it's totally like I said, subversive. It's but eventually what happens is we, like you said, our eyes open and we're like, wow, not only am I constantly acting from fear, but so are most people. Like most people, even very spiritual people, are often acting from fear. They're acting from risk mitigation and stuff like that. They're acting from um, a lack of faith that in themselves, really, most of the time,
Yes,
right?
yes. Oh my gosh, a million yeses. It's like we get on autopilot in our beliefs and our actions. And I want to keep coming back to this beautiful question, why? So if I feel a need to take any type of action, including anything with you, communicating with you, why am I doing this? Why do I feel the nudge to do this? And then look into, is it coming from fear, or is it coming from love and inspiration?
Yeah.
And so I'll just give like a sort of everyday example. That's like a really, in a way, mundane example, but it's just something I was noticing yesterday, that my kids are in school, and I had this nudge, I think it's from my ego, to call their schools and kind of make sure about their absence policy. And if I had tuned in before I actually had made the call to the school and said, well, why am I calling about this? And it was just coming from a fear, like almost this like irrational fear that somehow my kids would miss too much school and they'd have to retake the year or something, and everything would be all messed up. It was just, I was having just fear was coming up around that. It wasn't really based on any truth. It wasn't based on anything that was actually happening. It was just this fear that was coming up. And I did end up making the call because I didn't ask myself the question. And after I made the call, I thought to myself, I didn't really need to make that call. That was really a waste of time. That was feeding this fear that it was just a fear. And I can see how so many actions that I take are just feeding a fear, and they're not necessary. They are not necessary. It's a waste of my time.
Yeah. A lot of times too, because we have some of these beliefs about ourselves, or about, a lot of it too, I should say, is that there's a belief that we should worry about stuff. If we're not worrying, then we're not giving its due attention. And if we're not giving its due attention, who knows where it's going to end up? And this is a kind of I think a kind of an example of this is like, oh, here's a thing going on. My kids have missed a couple days of school. I think you need to miss a lot of school to.
Yes,
a
you
lot.
do. Yes.
And also, like, you'd expect that the school would inform you if they were missing a lot of school. The school's gonna go, what's going on here, right? And they're gonna ask how they can help make sure the kids in school more. So, but what we want to try to do is not use the rational mind to explain the fear away. We want to just not engage with it if we can, and
Yes.
let it run its course. Like, let it say its thing, let it do its thing, and just say, no, it's fine.
Yeah. And I think the way that perhaps I saw adults orienting around me as a kid, and I think I picked up, was this orientation of hypervigilance.
Yes.
Sort of this orientation of anything can go wrong at any moment, and we just have to be completely vigilant and prepared and make sure all the time. And so what I did around calling about those absences was that type of energy.
Yeah.
And what I know is the truth, what I really have faith in is, as you said, if something needs my attention, it will be very clearly brought to me. I can trust that spirit through the school system or whatever, they will let me know if I need to do anything in this aspect. Yep. I don't need to preemptively do it in this way.
And it's not going to come in and feel constricting either. It's not going to come in born out of fear.
Yes, it'll just be obvious. Oh, this is something that would be highest and best to take care of now.
Yeah.
So I want to help my thinking mind and just let go of this orientation of vigilance, and just trust that whatever needs my attention will clearly come into my field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, sometimes if we do act out the fears and play into them a little bit, and then, call the school or whatever, we can just use that information to go, okay, I really didn't have anything to be afraid of. I totally just made up this whole experience.
Yes.
None of this needed to happen at all. the feeling came up, and then that oh, there's something a lot of times too, especially if we've either heard lots of stories of people getting in trouble with rules, or we've grown up in families that are, very rule based, or very compliance oriented, I guess. The rules are this, we follow the rules. uh we can have these moments of, where are the rules that I might not be following, and where can I, and basically be afraid about what consequences I might endure for not following these rules.
Yes, it's this fear of worst case scenarios.
Hmm.
The thinking mind just can jump on that train on any aspect in life, right?
Yeah,
There could be a worst case scenario here where blankety blank could happen. So, and we could have 8 billion worst case scenarios of things in our life, and that could take up all of our time thinking about that.
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, so the orientation I want to adopt more, and I think I am doing it more, is just trust, faith, whatever needs my attention will be clearly brought to me. Everything else, I'm trusting that basically spirit has it under control for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you may be called to do something that mitigates risk in some way, right? Like,
But it'll be like obvious. It doesn't,
yeah,
if I'm in a worst case scenario mode in my head and I'm just acting from fear, this is probably not the highest and best thing
yeah.
to spend
The
time
best
on.
the best way to describe it is like, it'll just feel like, oh, it's time for me to do this now. Call the school, do the,
Yes, it'll
put
be
fill out
obvious.
this form. It's time for me to do this now. It's right here. It's obvious that I should do this. I'm not afraid of anything. It's just obvious I should do it.
I can see how I've been socialized, I think partly in the school system, to feel like I have to clean everything up. Like everything should be all like straightened up in my life. Like, oh, if they had these extra absences, I need to like figure it out. But that is not that's not the way to live. It's okay for things to not be totally like organized and cleaned up in every aspect. That's not the goal of living.
Yeah.
That's um and I also have a lot of Virgo in my astrology, so I do love to be super organized and everything's all like cleaned up and together. But that is not the highest and best way to live.
Yeah, it's hard because we can't ever achieve the cleanliness that we're trying to achieve, because life's just too there's too much chaos in our lives.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if we have a mentality of trying to maintain order constantly,
Yes.
then we're going to really be thrown off when things are a little bit rocky in different areas, stuff like that too. Um,
Yeah,
and
and I think
yeah,
this is such a expansion for I think anybody who's a parent and works and runs a household and is on the ascension path and is in a relationship. There's so many things that require your time and focus, and being more comfortable with letting some things slide and some things being kind of messy and not maybe really the way you'd ideally like them to be, just being okay with that, like finding peace within some chaos is a huge expansion, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. That's a really big one, because um, the universe sort of more truly or more closely to its actual mechanics works more on a chaos principle, because all entities have free will. There's never any certainty of what anyone's going to do. So everything is always a little chaotic because there's so many variables at play, and each variable holds its own sort of free will. I'm speaking of a variable, I'm basically saying a human is a variable in your encounters, right, or your circumstances. Like, if, for example, one of the secretaries at the school thought you were keeping your kids home because you were a drug addict for some reason. She got this in her head. right? She could make a whole bunch of problems for you randomly out of nowhere. There'd be no way to plan or prepare for any of this. We've had this happen similar to that with one of our children. It wasn't about drugs or anything, but he wasn't going. We weren't able to get him to school. He was like 8, I think, and we weren't able to get him to go. Anyway, but so basically, what I'm saying is, random people just can randomly do whatever they want, and there's a chaos that informs our lives, and it's sort of a little bit of our confusion as humans that we can put it all into order. What'll happen is we'll put it into order, and then something will pop out of order, and it'll just. But this popping out of order just happens constantly, so we're just constantly chasing these things that are out of order.
Yes,
And
it seems
if
like
we realize they're not out of order, they're as they're meant to be, then there's no more chasing after these phantoms, basically.
yes, and just coming back to the main topic of our stream today is this idea of, am I acting from fear or am I acting from inspiration? Like the why am I doing this? And do you want to back up and just maybe give some other examples of what you and I have kind of traversed through the past month about different fears, and then how we applied truth to the fears and the transmutation?
Sure. So I guess my biggest fear that I've been working on is probably a fear of abandonment. Um, Basically, there had been things that you were expressing that triggered in me thoughts that, oh, she's not feeling super safe, like she doesn't feel sort of unconditionally safe here. Um, and so if she doesn't feel that way, then I know that there's potential for her to act in uncertainty and in fear. And who knows, people do, when they're in fear, they do crazy stuff as well. So people are a little bit unpredictable when they're in enough fear about things, right? They do stuff. And so one of the things that I tend to do is I have a more avoidant type personality. And so if I'm really scared that somebody might abandon me, I might just leave preemptively, right? Because that seems to me sometimes, when I'm in a deeper fear, that seems like an easier route. It seems a little simpler, or it seems, just like, it seems almost inevitable to me. My fear seems so palpable and thick in some of those thoughts that it seems like I'm just waiting to be dismissed type thing, right? And so if I'm just waiting to be dismissed, then why wait? So that those thoughts start to come up. And so I'm not trying to say that it was you that made me feel this way. These feelings existed in me already, but I noticed them from our interactions is the better way to say it. It's not that you didn't have trust, and then I was like, oh my God, she doesn't have trust, so it built non-trust in me. I already had the fear. Otherwise, it wouldn't. Your fear wouldn't trigger mine, right? Like, so that's the way that I like to look at it. Because I don't want to make it sound like any partner is to blame if we're cycling through these fears. We're basically just showing each other all of our fear and letting it all come up and come out. But I guess so. For my whole life, I've had experiences of people just telling me that they'd never leave, that they care about me, all of these things. And then something happens, and usually, like, I say something that they don't like, or something like that, and then they just disappear. They just ghost. That's happened to me a few times. People just ghost me and leave. And then I had a lot of girlfriends sort of cheat on me and stuff too. They'd, like I said earlier, they'd ask to go do something, and everything would seem fine in the relationship as far as I know, but then they'd cheat on me. And so, I think at the time, a lot of it was just sort of, we were younger, maturity wasn't really there. My generation itself tends to be a little avoidant, right? My generation and the younger one, like they don't want to hurt people's feelings really. They don't really enjoy, that part of it. So they may not, if they're not interested anymore, they may just slink away into the shadows because, it's easier. It's easier for them. Um, so it's kind of a common practice for my generation to ghost or to do these things. And so, part of that is really really helpful for me because it helped me find my own strength, I guess. And when I was ghosted, stop needing to know what's going on, right? Like that was the biggest thing for me, is that I didn't understand what was happening. But yeah, so these were the things that happened in my life that formed this fear that eventually, no matter what they say, so no matter how loving they are, no matter what they comes out of their mouth, um, because I've heard it all. I've heard it all under the sun, as far as I'll never leave you. We won't necessarily, we maybe won't be together forever. We're like brother and sister beyond that or something, and best friends and things. I've heard all of it. And so Tassel and I often say these things to each other. We're best friends first and foremost, and we have some benefits on the side. And right. And so we say these things, but my point is that it's really hard for me to orient myself to a space of like being able to believe these types of words again, because I've believed them and then been shown I was in error to believe them, and then I believed them again and was shown I was in error, and that happened probably 3 or 4 times, so in a row, and then now we're here. So it ends up being this thing for me where I know that I'm presuming and this is how I move through it, is that I know that I'm using my past experience, and it's informing that Tassel's going to do the same thing that these other people do. The challenge is that the only way to move through this is faith, because I can't know, what she's going to do. No matter what she says, I'm not able to know for sure what she will do. I'm not able to know what I will do, right? And so if I start getting crazy and she can't handle it and has to, split, it's a whole, we can't predict the future. So we can't make any guarantees about anything. I have to just decide, like, can I trust this or not? And that's where it ends up getting to, because if I can't trust it, then what am I doing? I won't be able to trust any relationship, right? So the only option that I see is to trust and move forward. And so once I could see that logically, the fear was still there a lot. It's still very uncomfortable. But I just kept I just keep reminding myself to have faith and it's going to be okay and all that stuff. And literally just let it run its course and try to look at it and realize that it's not the reality of what's happening. It's just an experience I had a bunch of times, yes, but it doesn't contribute to probability or something the way that we would like to think. Like, just because it's happened 4 out of 5 times doesn't mean there's an 80% chance for it to happen again. Each unique situation can only really be measured within itself. There's no like correlation here between these relationships or any of this, right? There's no causal. Anyways, so we tend to be like, oh, look at all what I've seen before, and that's why we expect it to happen again. And so if we can see that that's why we expect it, is because it happened before and we're expecting it because we have this crappy story, we could just go, I don't need to expect this. I can just let go of this story. And that's I think what I did to try and move through it. And I don't think I'm all the way through. I don't think I'm fully through it. I think I'm sort of taking chunks out of it as we go. I think it's a pretty deep one for me. So that's been primarily the thing, as well as like she wanted to go dancing, and I think she's talked about it on stream a couple times. And I won't go into tons of it, all of the details, but there's associations with dancing for me that are just very intimate, and you know, it brought up ideas of self-worth issues that I had that I didn't realize. So I would basically was like, oh, okay, she's gonna go dance with all these other men and stuff and women, whatever. Eventually, she's gonna find someone that she wants to replace me with. Um, like eventually, the sparks are gonna fly, whatever, and that's gonna happen. And again, that feels inevitable. So it's it's a challenging one for me because I'm the opposite of this orientation. Like my actual view of things is the total opposite. I want her to go do everything she wants to do. I don't want her to feel like I don't want to taint her experiences with my fears either. Like, you know what I mean? Like if she's about to go have fun and then I'm like, right? Like that's kind of crappy. I'm kind of dirtying her experience with my crap, right? And so that part I don't like. I don't like the idea that I think it's up to me where she goes. Like there's a part of me that literally wants to just put her away somewhere. Like don't let her go out because then she'll see people that are better than you, and she'll know and she'll leave you. And like there's these thoughts coming in, and it's interesting because I don't tend to think this way like too much. Like it's not an undercurrent of my thought process. It's coming up for me to look at it now, right? And I'm grateful for it, but it's really uncomfortable to realize that I have this part of me that would kind of rather just lock you away, and like a toy, like you're my possession. And I think I told you the same thing. I think I said, there's a part of me that just wants to like possess you, that wants to just own and decide where you go and what you do. And the more I went into that place, I was like, this place is gross. And so, but that's part of it though, is that like these unsettling feelings, we have to explore them a little bit because they can feel really gross. And like, I don't want to feel like this. I don't agree with any of these premises either. But it's coming up. So I went into it because I thought Tassel's always saying, feel your feelings. These are pretty crappy feelings. So I'll go feel them. And then I had to like I had to go through a whole period. I got very upset with myself for feeling what I was feeling as well. So that it all built on top of itself, created this sort of mountain out of nothing, really. Not that much. We were just talking, you know. So so that was my experience, and how I ended up kind of moving through it. Um, and it's really silly. It's embarrassing even to talk about because who cares? Uh, and also if she did decide to leave, that's what it is. There's nothing I can do about any of it anyway. No matter what part of me wants to control and do whatever, I don't have control. It's an illusion that could even happen. So there's no point to any of it. The reason I'm experiencing it now is to let go of it, right? So, and so I had to see how just ridiculous it all was. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, this is so ridiculous that I can't even I could barely understand where it's coming from. Like I hadn't seen these parts of myself in so long, I think. These really, really deep sort of egoic attachments to power, or control or manipulation. Like, there were parts of me that wanted to like say things to like try to get you to not go, like try to convince you, but like not really directly just say, I would not like you to go because that's too vulnerable. So instead, I should say other things that are not lies, but just other things that might lead you down a different path, right? Started to think about stuff like that. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy. I'm thinking about trying to manipulate. And not that I would do these things, right? That's the key thing, is that this is just stuff that's coming up. It's not how I truly feel or how I see things, or, I don't want people to get confused. This is not Sean that I'm talking. This is not like my true being that's talking here. This is my ego freaking out, throwing tantrums, and trying to get me to do crazy things, basically. I'm trying to identify for everyone that I watch it. That's all I try to do is watch that ego flip out, and just as nicely as gently as I can, not participate but observe what it's doing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think it's just so amazing all that you just shared, and may feel vulnerable to share all of that.
Oh,
And it's
I
just,
hate sharing it. This is
it's
like my nightmare right
amazing.
now.
Oh, I just think it's so amazing. Like I I'm in awe
I
of
you know
that courageous share.
I'm the opposite, like, of the person that I described that wants to hold you. I think I've always told you I always want you to do whatever you want to do. I always want you to say
Yes.
whatever you want to
Yes.
say.
You
I've
always say that.
always been very adamant that I don't want to change anything about you. Um,
Yep.
to the degree that, like, you were texting and driving and doing stuff that was making me feel really nervous, but I wouldn't say anything about it because I didn't want to criticize or change you or comment
Yeah.
on what you're doing, because you're a sovereign being and do as you wish.
Mhm.
So that's my real, true view. Do as you wish, always. Uh,
Yes.
and so for me to feel this of like, oh, here you go, Sean. Tell her whatever. Try to whatever. I don't remember what the things were, but there were these little, like, um parts of me that were like, oh, maybe if she feels sorry enough for you, then she won't go. And then I'd be like, I would like her to go. So it's like I'm arguing with myself, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes.
but we don't have to do that part. I do that part to explore a bit, to argue. If you
Mhm.
argue with it, you're empowering it. You're engaging the fear now.
Mhm.
So there's a trick there. So if you don't want to engage the fear to understand the story better, you just say, no, that's not for me. If you just keep doing that over and over, it will eventually die down and die away because it's not getting energized through your attention. Um, but if you give it your attention in any way, you're energizing it. So if it says something nuts and then you argue with it, conflict brings more conflict. It'll argue back, basically. Once it once it sees an opposition, it's like, oh, we're playing, okay, and then it starts coming with more stuff, and it gets stronger. So that's how it feeds off you, the ego, and how it grows itself, and how it becomes bigger
Yes.
and bigger is through the arguing with yourself and the inner conflict or the tension between what the divine self is seeing and knows to be the path, and what the egoic self is convincing uh, that should be done instead. So yeah,
Yes. So the title of the stream today, The Power of Truth, is that you brought truth to this situation. You were able to see with the eyes of truth, with your consciousness, that, oh, I just have some fears here. That's why I'm uncomfortable. I have some fears around her doing things, and it's bringing up issues of self-worth and other things. And so I'm bringing just truth to the situation, and I'm not going to engage in my ego. I'm not going to take these actions that would be inspired by fear. And I'm going to come back to the truth of, I'm going to live in love and faith that I can be on this path and all is well.
yeah, yeah. Basically, truth. So fear is a lie, right? It's always a lie of some kind,
Yes.
um, because uh, fear is the opposite of truth, basically. Um, and we say that the universe is created with love. I would say love and truth are basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Love is, to me, is more closely described as just acceptance, unconditional acceptance. There's obviously different flavorings of love depending on our relationships that we have as well. But as far as just the sort of the underlying principle of love that is everything that exists, I would say that love is more just like an acceptance. a positive acceptance that everything is working out, best case scenario. And so that would be the truth. And so whenever we're worried about something not working out, we're engaging in a creation of our own fear. Anything that isn't working out, it doesn't matter if it's money or a job or, something with the house going wrong or the kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, there are no mistakes. So it doesn't mean these things won't happen. Things will happen for sure. Things are going to happen that suck, right? Things are going to happen and you're going to go, this sucks. That's going to happen. But what becomes more apparent in the moment of the sucky thing happening is I'm going to learn a lot from this because this is pretty sucky, right? So the kind of the harder it is, the more value we actually are getting out of it. And we start to see those opportunities a little bit clearer. And then as that happens, we get more space in ourselves to be able to see with truth instead of with our seeing with our false or lower self, getting tied up in our egoic or lower selves tantrums. And so we just see them for what they are, which is basically the lower human self, who has formed worldviews that are not in alignment with its truth, such as I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not smart enough, or people don't understand me when I talk, or a lot of the base fears come back to us as directly us and how we think of ourselves.
Yes.
And we can't, we need to see those through the eyes of divinity, through the eyes of our truth. And once we do that, we can just see through the illusion of all that fear. You're not going to prevent, so if you have challenges that are coming in your life to learn certain lessons, you're not going to be able to prevent them through your worry and your will, because you're not aware of what they are, first of all. And second of all, even if you prevent one somehow, the universe will just bring it a different way. Like there's no avoiding really the lessons. You can delay by skipping them, by just running away from stuff constantly.
Yes.
But they'll just keep on coming. And so that's one of the reasons why fear isn't real. Like if I'm scared that this thing might happen, the thing could happen. But
yeah,
the thing happens, right? It's going to happen.
Right.
It happens if it happens.
And I think I'll just say
suck.
what you're saying in a different way is that when we have an opportunity, when life is bringing us an opportunity. So you and I met and life brought us an opportunity to be in relationship together. When our fear comes up and the ego might, like you were saying, you might feel like, well, maybe I should just leave because what if she leaves in the future? So I'll just leave now to avoid the pain. We're missing out on the opportunity that life has brought us, that our soul it feels guided us to be in. So yes, it's possible that something might happen in the future that maybe we wouldn't like, but if we bail now, we're missing out on the opportunity that life has provided us.
Yeah.
So and then we're just acting from fear. We're just acting from fear. Everything could work out the way we would like it to work out. And if we don't try and step into the opportunity, we'll never know. We'll never know. Fear will never lead us to the pot of gold, ever. Fear will only take us out of our opportunities. So that's the way I'm looking at it, that if I'm making any decision about our relationship or maybe what I'm doing with my work from fear and not doing something or bailing on something, then I'm just totally missing out on my life completely. So I am going to go all in I love that phrase. I say it to you all the time. I'm all in. I'm going all in with everything that I'm involved in. And I'm going in with an open heart. And okay, if at some point my heart gets broken, then that was the path that I had been invited to go on.
Yeah.
And then I will deal with it then. And I hope it doesn't happen, but I'm not going to miss out on my opportunities that life is bringing me because of some perception that something bad could happen, but something good could happen too. And
Yeah.
I want to just be there to be on that ride and hold love and faith that the highest and best will happen.
Yeah. And even you mentioned you don't want to miss out. I just wanted to clarify because there's a fear of missing out that comes up too, right? Where maybe we participate in too many things because it all sounds great, and we don't want to miss out on anything. And so, just as there are no mistakes, you can't miss out on your lesson plan. Like the lessons come as they come, sort of. So we can't even miss out. So we basically, if all we really have to do is it's very very simple. As humans, we flip out and complicate everything, but it's so simple. We're just trying to choose expansion over constriction.
Yes.
And
yes.
And so fear of missing out helps us expand, but it also helps us expand into some sort of different ways. And if we're fearing missing out, that's perfect too, right? Because we're going to learn that, oh, I need to focus my energy a little better. We're going to learn a bunch of stuff in that also. But I only said this because you mentioned missing out, and I don't think you have this fear, but other people have a fear certainly of like, oh, I better get involved. Whenever the universe offers something, I say yes to everything. And they're basically fragmenting their energy all over the place. And so that might be a lesson for them too. Or it could just be that they'll have an awesome experience doing all these things, and maybe it won't culminate the way that society thinks is better, like with achievements and things. But she's been all over the place doing all these things and has had a really good life, right? So it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to have the metrics that we apply to everything. Those metrics are also created, and primarily the metrics of our own self-judgment and judging each other with our scores and our achievements and whatever. These are all fear-based judgments, right? So we have to try to let go of all of that stuff.
Yes.
And just notice when we're doing anything, when we're worried that we're not perfect as we are and whole as we are. So we're trying to obtain stuff, or we're trying to, do that, then that implies that we don't have what we need now.
Yes.
And so that will be a lesson for us at some point.
Would it be okay if I shared some of the big fears that have come up?
Sure.
For me over this month, and then the way I'm seeing it now. So very interestingly, we have just been mirroring each other completely, because so many fears of abandonment have come up for me over this past month. It's like really interesting that we're both working through that same fear. It's interesting, right? So, and I didn't really know, I didn't know that I had that fear before you and I met. I really didn't realize that that was such a deep, profound fear for me. I didn't see it. And my fear of abandonment revolves around if I'm really myself with someone, if I'm really honest with them, if I really speak my truth, they're going to abandon me. And that was my experience as a child, which I think is just a very, very deep, deep experience to have, and a deep wound to have, because it feels like it's about survival if family members, like abandon you as a child. So I the way I handled that as a child was I abandoned myself. I just became like a robot and tried to do and act and think how I thought my family members wanted me to, so that I could survive. So it took me decades and lots of therapy and inner work to even see that and move out of that. And then before I met you, I was, I think, at sort of my peak of I am in my truth and my authenticity and my sovereignty, and I'm not ever going to abandon myself and all of that, which is great. And then coming into relationship with you, where there is some invitation for harmony with each other, bringing together two different people with two different personalities, etc. And I notice in myself that I can have a fear that comes up with you around certain topics, like money is a certain topic that we've had, I would say, a little bit of a hard time talking about with each other. And there's some other topics too. And I get nervous during some of these topics because my fear of abandonment comes up, that, oh, if I really am honest, I really speak my truth, he's going to not like me and just go away, because that's what I experienced previously. So I just really see that, oh, I still am working through that fear of abandonment about, as I, speak my truth or whatever. And what I want to do is start anew, that everything that happened in my past with other people, that is the past. I do not have to bring the past into the now. That is the past. As you said, just because you had certain experiences with other women or I had certain experiences, it doesn't mean we're going to have the same experience with each other. So letting go of the past, letting go of the stories, letting go of my fears around all that, and just starting anew and having faith. So that's where, and I'm just, I wrote down a piece of paper and I showed you, I took a picture of it. I choose love and faith in us. And I'm just making that choice every day. I'm just choosing that I'm choosing love and faith in us and in every aspect of my life, and starting anew and letting go of my past, like, traumatic experiences, basically.
Yeah, I like that you said starting new. We can, and I think as humans, we tend to think that we have to do that on like New Year's, right? Like, or we tend to think that, next month we'll start this new practice or what, like every day, in fact, every moment, but every day is a new opportunity. Like, it's a new life, basically. You have an opportunity to start looking at everything properly, or not properly, but through truth.
Through truth. And the truth being, my past I don't need to bring my past with me. I don't need to repeat the patterns of these past relationships.
The truth. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And we can start anew. And I also want to say, I say this all the time, that I do think another component here is also, when the feelings do come up, to feel them, not to look for them and not to like make a pattern of engaging in them. But if a fear does come up, to just look what's coming up, to see it, to feel it, and move it through, as you are starting anew as well. So just kind of honoring what the human, because I think for you and for me and anyone else that were dealing with these things, I don't think I fully felt all that stuff as it was happening in the past. So it's coming up now to be felt and to be seen. as I'm also just committing, oh, that is the past, that I am starting anew now.
Yeah.
Both of those paths simultaneously.
Yeah. The way that I like to think about it, if I can, is, people make that joke, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
That's basically the way to try to actually actually embody the Christ.
Yes. Yes.
That that is a realistic goal. It's, I used to think that's just crazy, right? Because when I first got into these concepts, uh, I just didn't have enough. I didn't understand forgiveness enough. I didn't understand enough to realize that it was totally possible to just let go of a lot of this stuff. And so now where I've gotten to, I can say that it's totally possible. We can look at the eyes through the Christ or through our divinity, however we want to say that. And our divinity is whole and perfect as it is. There's no judgment from our divinity at all. There's only truth and faith and love. There's no fear at all. Um, Everything that is here is in accordance with our divine self's creation, in agreement to what the lower self has created around what was brought in or manifested. Um, and so the way that basically that I like to think about it is we're literally letting go of all of our stuff, that all of our burdens, all of our worries and fears and all of this stuff, and we're literally just putting it aside so that we can sit with our divine self or our Christed self and then observe everything from that perspective. Um, and it's a bit of a trick to do it, a little bit, because we have to sort of step aside from our pains and fears and stuff when we're in the moment. And you can, you get to a place, at least for me, I can go back and forth between like I'll be having I call them episodes of, where I'm in a story of fear, stuff's coming up, depending on how big of a story it is. It might be longer. It might last long. It takes me time to get through it. It's like I'm a computer. I like to think of it this way. We're like a computer that has to process this data. The data is the old experience and the new one combined to create this fear, scary chunk of data that has to be processed through us again. And what we're trying to do is to choose to process it through the eyes of the Christ. We're trying to forgive and love what's happened in the past and what's happening now so that we can let go of all of it and basically just forget about it as a thing. Let go of the past. The past doesn't have to inform anything. We don't have to stick to our history. We don't have to stick to our names and labels. We don't have to, so for example, I call myself a wizard, but I'm also a druid. You could call me a philosopher, a mystic. You could call me an IT guy, a dad, an ex-husband. I was a husband at a time. I'm a man. None of these words describe me. They describe things I do, right? And when we are not in our divine self, we're limited by all of our fears and descriptions and boxes that we've put ourselves in. And the divine self has no name, no identity in that way, no labeling, literally just I am, right? And that's what that I am presence is I'm not any of these limitations of this human creation. I'm a divine being here now as you, watching all of this process through us, watching the world around us. And that's what that's what I, at least that's what I mean when I'm saying see that through the eyes of truth, the eyes of the Christ or the eyes of the angel or however we want to see that, transmutes everything that it sees, uplifts it all into a divine status, because everything is claimed by the divine self as divine and brought in to raise its vibration in your consciousness. And so you're healing everything in the world just by looking at it, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful what you just shared. What also came through for me to share is as souls coming into our bodies and having different experiences in our various lifetimes, some of which are really painful, like experiences that you had with women, where they left you or cheated on you, and experiences I had of feeling abandoned as a child. Those experiences all grew us in some beautiful ways. They grew our maybe sense of strength, our sense of compassion, our ability to be open-hearted, no matter what other people might bring to us. So all of those experiences were gold, and they expanded us as souls. But we're not meant to carry the trauma with us as well, and for that trauma to limit our experiences going forward. So the experiences themselves were beautiful in so many ways and gave us so many gifts, and they expanded us, and then we can just let go of the actual trauma of it and the fears that understandably were manifested through those experiences, so that we can carry on and move forward and have wonderful experiences in similar situations to that. So
Yeah.
we're meant to have all those experiences, to grow, and then to just let go of what no longer serves us from having had that experience. So just bringing forward the positive aspects of those experiences, which were our own expansions, and letting go of the quote unquote negative aspects of the things that might be hindering us now in relationship or in our lives. And so it's all beautiful. It's all perfect. And just one other point I wanted to make is a lot of what we're talking about is living outside of our comfort zone of the ego. The ego wants security. It wants to know exactly what's going to happen to protect itself. So so I can see for myself that most of my life, I chose men in a way from an aspect of security, thinking, oh, this one won't leave me. And then I wouldn't have to, I guess, deal with that fear of abandonment that I had. So I was living in like this comfort zone of my ego, of like playing it safe. So, oh, I'll just be with this guy because I don't think he'll ever leave me. And it's comfortable and safe. But of course, that's kind of a dead-end, non-aligned way to be with a partner, and not fair to that partner either. Or we might stay in a job because it's comfortable to the ego, even though it's very deadening to the soul. So the path that we're always being invited to be on is to jump out of our ego's comfort zone and to jump into a life where we're choosing from inspiration. We're not choosing for comfort and security and knowing how everything's going to turn out. We're choosing from inspiration. We're choosing from joy and passion and excitement and being alive. And at times, the ego might freak out.
Yeah,
because it's not always known.
Yeah, and it's through framing the world through comfort, discomfort, like, dislike, through it. That's basically viewing the world through duality. It's through looking at the world that way that causes our suffering. So we feel like it's more comfortable to be in the egoic, that's what, just because that's what we're used to. But we'll actually be a lot more comfortable when we're not in those modes. And one thing you mentioned earlier, talking about how we don't have to repeat the stuff. So you can notice how stuff happened in the past. At least I've noticed this. Stuff happened in the past. You can notice how, from a sort of divine planning perspective, it's appropriate, right? Like, I learned a lot there about myself, about how to interact with people, about how to love, how to serve, whatever. I learned tons and tons of stuff. It was really hard. But I can see Maybe I'm not grateful yet, but I can at least see that it was appropriate. Like I learned a lot there. Um, the same that is always the case for everything we ever experience. It just sometimes it takes us some time to get to that place where we can actually see that. Um, but that's always the case, and this is how we can remember there are no mistakes. Um, Everything that's ever happened to us in the past that was hard, we got through it, and it was fine. It was okay. We got through it, and maybe it wasn't okay, but we got through it, and we learned lots and lots and lots of stuff from it. The same stuff's gonna, not the same stuff, but stuff is gonna happen in the future. It's gonna be fine. It's not a mistake. We're gonna get through that too. It's gonna be, and then beyond that, we're gonna notice how appropriate it was that it happened, and that's the constant sort of cycling of thing happens, we hate it, and then we go, I learned a lot. Okay, I learned a lot, until we move into forgiveness, which allows us to feel grateful for it. And so we go through that cycle with every event. And if you just think about stuff in your past that you've had to do this with, you'll realize if you apply this to any major past situation, you'll notice most likely that there was so much that you learned that even though it sucked, you wouldn't really be who you are if you didn't have it happen to you. So you can't really say that you wish it didn't happen. But, maybe you're not grateful yet, but either way, you'll notice that you do that constantly, and you can just apply that to the future and just say, I know based on everything that I've seen that the next thing might suck too, and it'll be okay,
And it really only sucks because
we're judging it.
Yeah, and it might be just like a new lesson that we're learning, and it's taking us outside of our comfort zone and taking us outside of what our ego might want.
Yeah, expect great things.
And you're right.
Expect good lessons.
We're judging it. We're thinking, oh, there's something wrong here. And part of what I take from what you just said, and what I just believe is nothing is wrong.
Right. Nothing's wrong. That's
nothing is good. Nothing is going wrong at any time. It might feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it might not be great. It might not feel great, but
nothing is wrong, and it's all perfect in the end. And then just a great phrase I'm sure we use sometimes is, "This too shall pass."
Yeah, that's a really good one. This too shall pass.
That just brings a lot of comfort that whatever you're in, it will pass. And I'll just quickly say, like, for instance, for me, I went through such a very brutal divorce custody situation, and I kind of thought I was just going to die from the amount of pain that I was going through. But it passed. That situation passed. I grew more than I'd ever grown in any situation. And at this point, my ex-husband and I have a lot of love and peace with each other, and it basically all worked out. And at the time, I thought, there is no way I will ever survive this. There's no way I can ever heal my heart from that. I thought it was like just end game of my life, basically.
Same. And I'm in the same, very similar situation.
Yes.
Lots of harmony between us, working together to just do what's best for the kids, friendly.
Yes.
And that's even, it's only been a year and a bit, right? So
yes. So like the most sort of brutal situations that the ego's perceiving them as brutal, we can survive and thrive, and it will pass. Every situation will pass eventually.
Yeah. That's the sort of, everything's impermanent. Everything cycles. So everything comes and goes.
Yes.
So no state lasts forever. And so, that's a really good one. This too shall pass. And trying to just let yourself off the hook as well for when you do feel afraid. And because what ends up happening, at least for me, is I beat myself up because I don't want to. I'm very aware that the fear is not real, so I get upset with myself for like entertaining it, because I forget in the moment sometimes that I have to look at it. Like I'm not doing anything wrong, right? I didn't make a
Yes.
mistake. I'm supposed to
Yes.
see this way. And so I get
It's
upset with myself
yeah.
because I feel like I messed up. I got tied up in my story. I screwed up, but that's not what's happened. So what's happened is my story has come up so that I could see it. And
Yes.
so we don't have to be hard on ourselves when we're in all this pain. We don't have to add to it. It's already hard enough.
Exactly. Exactly. Just blanket of grace to yourself and everyone else. And there's no rush. We're infinite, eternal beings. We'll eventually get it all.
Yeah. I don't
There's
even
no
think we
time
can
limit.
rush. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't even think rushing happens, to be honest. I think the lessons just like almost like clockwork. They just arrive in these cycles of
Yes, it's fascinating,
here
isn't
they are,
it?
here they
It's
are.
like, oh, here's my next initiation.
Yeah,
All
we go
right.
through ups and downs and
Yes.
periods of comfort and discomfort, and it's just constant. Um,
Yeah.
and all of that is like none of that I don't think ever changes. What changes though is our ability to not be swayed by what's happening around us and stuff. So as we heal all
Yeah.
these distortions, I mentioned one thing the other day where I backed into a car, and to me it was as if nothing happened. I was like, "Oops!"
That's
It was as if
that's
nothing even happened.
impressive. Yeah.
I was very happy with myself. This was one of the moments where I was like, "Good job, bud,"
Yeah.
because
That's impressive.
I didn't feel shame. I didn't feel guilt really. Like maybe little tinge of just like I felt bad for my parents' car a little bit.
Yeah.
But because it was their car that I drove, and it was very light, and there was no damage. Nobody was hurt really. Um, or there was a little bit of damage. But point is that we get to a place where in the past this would really throw me over, right? That would ruin my whole day, that type of thing. At least the whole day. I might think about it for a week. But in this time, I was like, yeah, I mean, that must have been a thing for either for them as it must be for them because I don't care. And it sounds like I'm saying I don't care that I've damaged their property. I don't care that it's not that I don't care that these things occurred. It's that I'm not blaming myself and taking
You're
on all
not
this guilt.
you're not suffering
I'm just
over it.
thinking, yeah. And so I just thought, well, how do I rectify the situation? So I gave them the information for us, and I did the normal things that you do. I apologize those things because it was a mistake, or I don't believe in mistakes, but it was an accident, right?
Right.
And that's the thing is what am I apologizing for, really? And this is where we realize that Sean didn't even do anything. Sean just was going about his day, and a thing happened, right? Like, and even these things that happened, uh, the divinity, the universe expressed itself, and two cars collided, right? Is basically what happened. I didn't do anything. I'm just watching. So we start to get to that place, and it's a bit weird, and it can trigger people because in a situation like that, most people want you to be like, I'm sorry, and I do that, but I'm pretending. Really, is what I'm doing. I'm pretending to be sorry. I'm not sorry. How can I be sorry for something that I didn't do? Right. So it's an odd place to be in. But it's really interesting what happens here because we both recognize what we need to do to rectify and what feels good to make reparations for this thing that's occurred that's obviously upset someone else perhaps, and what we can do to set things a bit more right or what we feel is more aligned, while not taking on the guilt and the shame. We don't have to do that. We don't have to feel bad about what we've done. We don't have to. We can just go whoopsie doozy and continue about our day. We really don't have to. We have a societal programming that says that we have to feel guilt and shame when we make any type of error, but there is no error. So the whole forming of that logic is bananas. But people will still get offended if we seem to be perceived to have made a mistake, and then we say, "Well, I didn't do anything." I'm not suggesting we should tell people this, especially like just regular strangers and stuff. You know, but truly, this is sort of the stage that I'm at now, where how I see things, and it's very peaceful because in this state, you just aren't you're expressing yourself in love always, and so when I hit a car, love. There's no beating myself up because the neighbor might be upset and there's none of that because it's love. There's no freaking out. And so I'm the reason I'm saying all this is because one of our fears is that we're not going to meet people's social expectations for our own guilt and shame. And so a lot of times we put on these cloaks or these costumes of guilt and shame and stuff just so that other people can feel better, right? And we don't need to do that either. But if we don't do that, some people are going to take it that you're a narcissist or that they'll take it however they take it. So, and I've seen this happen. I've watched this stuff happen in relationships that I've had, and people, when we don't show guilt and shame for our actions, people get confused by that. So, because it's like a social contract, right? It's when I feel so bad about what I've done, but we don't have to do that. We're punishing ourselves. We don't need to do that. We could just notice what happened. Like in the car, for example, when I was backing up, I was not paying enough attention. I was talking to Sawyer. I did make, like, in the 3D or physical world, I did make a mistake, right? Like I made an error in judgment. I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been. And I didn't, and also the rear view camera thing was all gunked up from the snow, I think. So I couldn't really see. So there was errors in judgment, or like mechanical sort of physical errors that Sean made, that led to this happening. So you notice those for what they are. You don't have to feel bad about it. That's an optional component.
Yeah, what you're saying is you can make the appropriate reparations to the people who own the other car, and you can learn from what happened and shift your behavior, but we don't need to like steep ourselves in guilt and shame and self-punishment.
We don't need to judge ourselves.
Yeah, judge ourselves.
So if we're saying there are no mistakes, then what are we judging ourselves for? Like, what could we have done differently if it wasn't a mistake? It was going to occur in some form. It may not have occurred in the form that it happened in, but there are no mistakes and no accidents, no coincidences. We don't. That's how synchronicity all works as well. Everything is very, very precise in how it falls into place. And it's meant to have an illusion of chaos, is really what it's meant to do. But there is no mistake. Therefore, any judgment we do after the mistake is just an unnecessary component to our learning. Mm-hmm. We're layering on pain and judgment. And we don't need to do that. It doesn't help us repair the situation. It doesn't help us. In fact, it can cause us wounding, trauma. If we're hard enough on ourselves over mistakes, we can wound ourselves where now we have more shadow and stuff coming up. We can create whole new wounds of trauma and experience just from doing this to ourselves. It's fine to just apologize to people when you recognize that at the human level, yeah, some stuff happened and I did a thing. See that for what it is. But at the higher perspective, know that Sean just an actor in a play, and he certainly didn't choose to drive into the car, right? Like, it's not like he was like, I'm gonna go drive into this car. So basically let the self off the hook clean up. It's like walking a dog. They poop on the in the grass. You clean up the poop and move along, right? You don't sit there and scream at the dog if it poops and whatever. Like it's learning. You're learning, and then so anyways, that you just clean it up and move on. You don't have to tear yourself down as you do it.
Absolutely.
But I think that's probably a good time to end. We've been going for hour and 20 minutes now, so thank you everyone for watching. Hope you liked the video and subscribe.
Yes. Thank you so much, and so much love to everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.